Okay, so now we're going to move on to the second activity of tutorial 4, which is to model a doorstop. So instead of doing a sketch like we used to do before, what we can do is we can create, and we can actually create 3D bodies immediately, right? So for now, we're just going to create box, which is over here. Select box. Similarly, we're going to select the same plane, which is the bottom one. And now you can see it's going to let us create a box. So in this case, I'm just going to drag this out, and I'm going to make this 5 inches. So again, inches is the double quotation marks. Hit tab to switch over to the other side. We'll make this 1.8 inches. Okay, we're gonna click, left click, and now it's automatically extruded up for us. In this case, we can still select how high we want our box to be. In this case, I'm going to select 0.2 inches. And just like that, in a single command, we have our box. So instead of going into sketches, drawing the sketch, pressing extrude and creating a box, this helps to simplify our workflow and our timeline essentially. So what we can do is we can again use that create 3D tool. And this time we're going to select cylinder. And again, we can select our face. This time I'm going to select the top face. And here you can see that I can actually position this on the edges of my box. It's referencing it. So in this case, there's a middle line here, which you can see with the midline constraint, so the midpoint constraint, the triangle. I'm going to click, left click, and now you can see I can drag it out however I want. And in this case, I want to meet the edges, so I'm going to select here, and it will snap to the edge accordingly. I'm going to hit left click, and now again, it's going to give me an extrude tool. In this case, what I want it to do is actually to go underneath it. So I'm going to pan it down. You can see how it looks. I'm going to select the arrow. I'm going to drag it down. And let's just say I've forgotten what this height is. All I can do is, again, select the bottom face. And it'll automatically bring it down. In this case, it's 5.8 millimeters. Now, right now, it's cutting because by default, if you extrude bodies into one another, they're going to want to cut. You select here, operation, and select join instead. We'll hit OK. And now we have the start of our doorstop. You can see here this is the sort of shape we want. And all we had to do was use 2 commands. So this doesn't look like a very good doorstop. If anything, this is just going to slide over. So if you are having issues with doing this, remember, if we want to reference any of these edges, our plane must be on the edge itself. If you see, right, if I try and do the same thing, cylinder, and now I select the bottom plane like I did before, I can't select this edge because this edge does not exist on that plane. I've selected the plane, not the body itself. So think of it as I'm putting a new sheet of paper on top of my body, and that piece of paper has no idea where the edge is. But if I were to create my, I'm going to right click and repeat. If I were to select the face, or even the bottom face, let's just say I want to do what I did, but select the bottom face. You should see now I can reference it because I'm selecting the face that I'm drawing on in this case. And so it references the body. If I don't select this, I select the plane, then it's not going to refer to this body because I'm basically telling Fusion I want to create a new piece of paper to draw my sketch on or to create my body on. So that's why you have to select the face that you want to reference in this case. So we'll go back. So again, this makes for a very pitiful doorstop. How do we make this basically have an angle, you think? I mean, with the tools, what you could do is you could draw, maybe you're thinking, I'll draw a sketch in the middle, and I'll do something like, I don't know, let's just say this, for example, and draw an angle, right? And then I'll extrude this out, I'll cut it out, blah, blah, blah. Tedious. So instead, there's a very simple tool for this. It's called the draft tool, right? So we're going to hit S, bring out our shortcut, type in draft, like a draft of wind. And now you can see here, it's going to select pull direction. So I'll do it first and then explain along the way, right? So I'm going to select this face, the pull direction, select this front face. And for faces, I'm going to select the top face. And now you can see it's given me an angle wheel here. I'm going to click and drag this out, and you can see now I can essentially change the angle of my face, and the rest will follow along. In this case, I'm gonna do a degree, 9 degrees for my angle. Okay, gonna hit OK, and you can see my body is here. Now to explain this function a little bit, let's go back. The pull direction, if you think about it, think of it as the face that you want to keep the same, but that has the axis in which you want to rotate the angle. So in this case, if we go back here, you can think of it as this. I want to rotate this face along this axis, right? And I want to do it without affecting the connections, obviously. So if I go back to draft, first I'll do is I'll select the face, which in this case is over here because this is my axis that I want to rotate it on, right? I've got my face. And now, by default, if I select this face, my angle line, my axis line to rotate will be on the top one here. If I want, say I want to make this one rotate out instead. In this case, I can't because it's angled, so let's go back. Because again, it has to be smooth, right? So let's do a draft like this. Again, we'll select this face. And now I want to make this one change. If I select this, then you can see now my axis changes to this side, right? So think of it as two faces, and the line, the edge in between is your axis of rotation. So you can see here, I'm rotating, right? But you might think, what if I try this way instead? What if I did this way? And then as my what if I selected my pull direction as the top and my face as the bottom? And you can see it's just reversed essentially. You see? So you always select the pull direction as the face that you want to essentially keep still, and then the face that you want to rotate, you will select as face here. So as an example, again, pull direction here, right? You can see the arrow denoting this is the pull direction. The face will select the top, and here you can control the angle however you want. Okay. So this works for.
What happens if you go on minus? Does it like?
No, it wouldn't. It would do
okay.
that, you see, because you're cutting into the body.
Okay,
But I mean, yeah, if you want, you could do that. Wouldn't really make sense. Okay, so now we've got the proper shape, essentially. But this still looks like a very lousy doorstop, right? If your door hits this, it's going to just fall off, right off. And maybe you can't even go past this lip. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a chamfer here. And we're going to select this edge to pull in, essentially. So if we pull in, you can see how it's creating a chamfer like so. And we'll leave it at 5, right? And now we have a sharp edge that should allow our door to go into any gaps. Our doorstop to go into any gaps beneath the door itself. So from here, what we want to do is we don't need our doorstop to be a solid body like this, right? So we can again use the shell command. Select the bottom. And we'll give this a thickness of 0.1 inches. Hit OK. And now this looks like a proper doorstop, you know. Plastic is money, it's material, we don't want to waste it, so we're gonna make this as hollow as possible. Because really we just want the friction anyways. Okay. So now with this, we also don't want this to be too sharp. So we can go to fillet, which is the shortcut F. Select our line that we want to fillet. And in this case, we want to make this also go in so that it's not so sharp. And we can make this, we can either use the arrow to pull it in, or in this case, I will just make it 0.8 inches. So you can see here, this doesn't let us put our fillet, and that's because of the geometry. I've selected this line here. So if I want to do it, what I can do instead is I can select the plus to select just this edge for now. What I'll do is I'll give this a 0.8 inch fillet. Maybe this is a bit too much. Let's just do 0.2. Okay, that looks fine. Then we can hit OK. And now, if you see, if I go back to fillet, you can see that our fillet line has changed. Now I can go all the way down. So I think we went through this in a previous tutorial about how the fillets were changed from the previous fusion. But with this, now I should be able to do 0.8 inches. A bit too high, let's just do 6. If that works. 5. Again, you just have to play around a little bit. Should work eventually. Yeah, that looks fine. So 0.2 is fine. We'll hit OK. And now we've got our filleted edge, essentially. So if I want to, I can always change this to be a bit less because it looks quite big. In this case, I'll go back and change it to 1. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Alright, you can see our edges are nice and curved now. So you want to cut yourself. Okay, so next, what we need is to have the top part have a little bit more grip. And the way we do that with a doorstop is to extrude out a bunch of lines, essentially. It sort of increases the surface area, right? So if we were to try and create a sketch, say on a flat plane like here, you'll realize, let's just do it one as an example for now. I'm going to extrude this. You can see that it's not quite following our profile, right? So if you think about it, the extrude function is going to follow the same angle that you selected your face, that you selected the sketch face to be on. So in this case, if I'm going to hit Ctrl Z to go back,
Like offset kind?
if I'm going to create my sketch, I can instead select this face because it's already angled, right? And in this case, let's just quickly do a rectangle. Okay. And now you can see that the angle is actually, the sketch is actually angled along with the face because I'm using this as my plane to sketch on. And if I hit extrude, select the face, you will see that it has extruded in the same angle and it's also perpendicular to it. So if you need to have, you have to think of planes and faces as somewhat interchangeable. I would say it depends on the geometry you want. If you do want to have your extrusion come out at a different angle, you can always do it the first way, which is through the first sketch. But in this case, since I want it to be flat, a much simpler way is just to create the sketch on the face itself, and then that way when I extrude it, it's going to take on the same orientation as that face that I selected. For now, I'll just go back to my sketch and I'll make this a bit more proper. So I've created, let's just start from the start. So what I'll do is I'll again go to rectangular sketch. I'll select one end over here and I'll actually drag it across past the curvature point. And now I'm going to press D shortcut so I can dimension it. I want this, the width essentially of this rectangle to be a bit smaller. So again, I can dimension it, I'll just make it 4. Or I can always, without the dimension, click and drag and it should. So if I do this, I can always scale it this way, right? In this case, I don't need to be very exact. I'm just going to leave it like this. Again, you can dimension it if you like. But for now, I'll leave it like this. And again, if we want to have a pattern repeat, what are we going to do? We're going to use the rectangular pattern feature, right? So again, it's just drilling it into you. In this case, though, we don't really need to go all the way because as you see, we actually need to have this rounded off, right? If we were to make this a rectangular pattern right now, oops, wrong one. If we select this and we go and make this a rectangular pattern, let's make this 6. Okay. Now, if I want to round all of these off, I'm going to have to do it manually one by one, which is a real pain. So if I don't want to do all 6, essentially a much simpler way is to just do 3 and then mirror it, right? Because these are going to be the same. This is symmetrical. So for now, I'll just quickly draw my center line. And again, I can either select the face here, right, the midpoint on this line, or even in the arch here, it should let me, in this case, no, because it's a cylinder, but that's fine. We'll select the midpoint here. You can see the constraint, right? We'll draw a line up. We can always draw past, it doesn't matter in this case. You should see that this is straight with a perpendicular constraint, so that means that it is straight. We'll select the line, press X to make it a construction line, or we can also select this button here in the sketch palette. And now we have our center line, right? So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to again create a rectangular pattern. Sorry, done it the wrong way again. Select it, double click to select all the lines again, if you want to make it faster. We only need 3, that's correct, and we're bringing out to about 12. 12 looks okay to me. So make a distance of 12 and a quantity of 3. We'll hit OK, and now we have the first side of our angle. Now, what I could do is I could go to create circle, and I can create a 2 tangent circle, right? And what that does is if I select the first edge and the opposite edge, when I put a circle, it's going to be perfectly tangent to it. and I can place it in whatever location I want. It feels fine. You can see no matter how I move out of this bounding area, it's going to remain tangent and in line with this. Now if I were to press T for trim, T is the shortcut trim, and I just remove these lines, now I have a perfect profile to extrude this from, and I'm just going to show for an example. Make this less, do 2, hit OK, and you can see I have my curved edge on the top and a flat edge on the bottom, right? I don't want to do this because it's kind of finicky. What if you need this to be nice and symmetrical? So what I can do is I'll go back to my sketch. Hang on, I'll undo first. What I want is I want my circles essentially to follow this arc here, right? Because this will make it look a lot nicer. So again, what I can do is I can select the offset. I can select this line. I'll just drag it down and I'll make it a offset about 3. Okay. Now again, I don't want this to be part of my sketch, so I'll press X to make it a construction line. I also don't need these lines because I just want this arch basically. So I'm going to select the lines, press delete to remove them. Select them on the bottom as well. And now I have an arch that I can follow along with essentially. So from here, what I can do is I can create my circle. Again, go back to tangent circle. Now if I select my edges, I can basically align them with my mouse. One here, you can see roughly it's in line with my arch. I'm going to select the second one, and again, roughly in the middle here. And the last one, roughly in the middle here. And so now these will sort of follow a nicer pattern along the arch. Again, if I want to reposition this at any time, I can. But for now, this looks okay to me. I'm going to hit escape so I can go back to my tools. I'm going to press the T button again to bring up my trim tool. And here I can just remove the bottom half of the arches. Like so. Okay, so now, and again, I don't really need this anymore, so I can also just delete this, keep it a little bit more organized. So I've got my sketches here. I'm going to before I forget, I need to mirror it. So I'm going to select mirror on the top left here. I'm going to select my lines. I'm going to select them all, like so. Once I've selected them, I'll select my mirror line in the middle. You can see it previews it for me. I'm going to select OK. And now I've got my sketch ready to be extruded. So I'll hit Finish Sketch, press E for Extrude, select the profiles I want. You can see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now if you're not getting this, like if you can't select these, or if you select them and it also selects these, for example like this, it means that your arches are not actually connected to the lines, in which case you need to go back and redo and make sure that you've got tangent, it's not here, but the 2 tangent circle enabled, right? Either that or you can use the coincident constraint. For now, I'll show you that in a second. For now, I'll just increase this and I'll extrude this by 2 millimeters. Hit the join tool, that's fine. Now what I mean by what I said just now is if I go back to my sketch and let's just say, as an example, say this is exaggerated obviously, but let's just say it's something like this, right? If you see now, my face has been messed up because this profile no longer follows that arch, you see. So if that happens, again, the best course is just to redo with the 2 tangent circle. 2 tangent circle, select the line, place it wherever, you know. But you can also select coincident, which basically just means connect this point to this line. And now it's coincident. And you can see my profile has been repaired, right? So again, play around with the constraints, really understand what they do. And if your profiles do not match up, it's probably because your lines are not connecting. So hit Finish Sketch, it looks okay. So it's nothing look better now. We're just going to end this off by filleting the edges. Now I can select the edges individually one by one, or in this case, since I want it to be all even, I can simply select the face. So I'll select the first one, second, third, fourth, fifth, and the sixth. So now if I give it a fillet of say 1mm, it will automatically do it along the edges, like so, as you can see. So if I go into the shaded visual style, you can see this looks like a proper doorstop. Now I can give it an appearance if I want to. In this case, I'll just give it a very simple plastic, let's just do ABS white.
I'm retarded?
Again, if you want to offset something, think of it this way. If you know the name, I want to offset this, right? But where's that darned tool?
No, I can find
No, where's the darn tool? Just hit S, right? And I'll type offset. Now I've got offset. Okay? Now it tells me what curves to select. Oh, look at that, I can't select this. Why is that? Why is that?
I don't know, maybe because it's not a sketch.
Project it. Hit OK. Now you've got your line there, right? See before, oops. Sorry, hang on. Project. It should let me, if I go offset, now it lets me offset it. So if you, even though you've put it on the face, oops, right, you've selected this face, you've got a sketch, and you try to offset, you can't offset. Think of it, why isn't it letting you offset? What is a fundamental idea of sketches?
They basically make bodies. So
No,
once the
so
bodies made,
it's like a piece of paper, right? If you draw something,
You should determine the surface first.
you have this,
Plane.
yeah. So you have essentially a piece of paper right now, right? But you haven't traced anything yet. So let's just pretend you have your hand, okay? You got a piece of paper. If you don't have your hand on the piece of paper, then it's not going to draw it for you, right? But that's fine. Okay, I'm going to put my hand on the piece of paper. But your hand, the piece, if you want to then offset that drawing, right? In this case, you want to draw around your hand wider. What do you need to first do? You need to first draw the profile of your hand. So think of projection as you have an object and you want to get the outline of the object. So in this case, in the example, it's your hand. You put your hand on a piece of paper, you take your pen, and you draw all around the edge, right? And now when you remove your hand, you've got the outline of your hand. It's a 2D image, yes, but it's still there. And now if you want to draw it inside, you want to offset inside the hand, if you want to offset outside, you can refer to the drawing you've just done. So the initial drawing of your hand that you did, that's essentially a projection, right? So imagine this is your hand right now. You've got your hand on the piece of paper, like so, but I can't offset it because my hand is on the paper, but I don't have a line to say this is my hand, right? So in this case, I need to project it. Press P for project, and I'm saying this is the surface of my hand. I'm gonna go and draw an outline around it. Hit OK. Now, if say I remove my hand, it's gone now. I still have the outline. And I say, you know what, I want to make this smaller. If I click the drawing, in this case, it's computer, so it does it automatically. Now I can offset it because I have that drawing of which to reference it off of, essentially. You see? So your sketches are meaningless unless you have an actual sketch on it, a line, so to speak. You can either draw the sketch yourself or you can reference it from a body using projections, which is essentially just tracing the object. And again, you don't even need to put the object directly on your body. So let's just say, for example, let me just save this first. Say I don't want a sketch of this. As in, I want my sketch to still be on this plane, but instead of referencing this outline, this one here, I want to reference the bottom one. Oops. I want to reference this one. right? But I want to work on this plane. I essentially want to put a piece of paper, angle my hand 45 degrees upwards, and create a perfect trace of that. Well, in the real life, you can't really do that very effectively, right? But in computer software, you can. So what you do is you create a sketch here, for example. And again, my sketch plane is at an angle, right? But watch if I project this edge here, hit OK, you can see that it's basically taken this angle and projected it upwards. See? It's projected it this way. So now if I ever need to reference this bottom one on this plane, and again it's at an angle, that's why it's off center. But now I can, you see? Think of it this way, it's like, let me go into 3D Sketch real quick, if I can. I've basically got a projection like so, right? Think of it like this. I've basically taken this line, this angle, and I've projected it in this direction, because again, it's perpendicular to my face. And so if I hide my body, this line here, in fact, let me make it easier to see. These two sketches are essentially the same, right? But they're on different faces. And so I'm tracing the body but on a different angle, right? So this would be like your hand being lifted up 45 degrees in the air, but you can still trace it, essentially. Yeah. So you have to understand projections, but this is really just more of a practice thing. Again, it's always practice, practice, practice.